Welcome to my studio tour 2025. If this is the first time you are seeing my channel, my name is Just Jacob Wolf, and I co-run a production company here in Copenhagen. We mainly focus on the studio aspect, the studio side of content creation. We also do watch photography and branded content in general. So if you find this video inspiring or helpful in any way, then you're welcome. Today I'm showing you our Creative Studio 2025 setup, and the reason I chose to do this at the moment is actually because we're changing up a bunch of stuff, and I wanted to show how we use this to earn money in our company in the studio business side of content creation. But I also want to be very transparent. This is not a YouTuber's studio tour. This is a studio we use to earn money for our business as creatives. The studio has been built around 3 different sections. The first one is a video podcast studio. The next one is a creative content studio where we can film a whole bunch of stuff. And the last part, of course, is all the storage and all the behind the scenes, the things that are looking quite messy at the moment. But that part is also needed in a creative studio for a good workflow. And as I tried to say before, this is a content studio. It's not a YouTube studio. It's not a film studio. It is a content studio, and that means our focus leans towards the corporate clients, the e-commerce brands, and the businesses that use podcasting to build authority. And this studio has not necessarily been built for the influencers, like I feel like most other people I see online who are YouTubers or really popular on Instagram and so on. But of course this studio could also be used for that. But from a business aspect, it's more the corporate clients and the e-commerce that we have as clients here in our studio. And as I said, the studio will look very different in just a few months, but I'll try to share my improvements and how we are making it along the way. So stay tuned for that, or subscribe, whatever, if you're interested, of course. But if we should start somewhere, I feel like we should start with the podcast studio. It's the most plug and play for us. It's easy to produce. And what you will see is that this room is actually pretty small. That is definitely something we want in the new setup, some more space, because fitting 4 people in here is possible, but it is tough. Of course, we are using acoustic panels and we have lights in the ceiling, so we just turn on the switch and there is light, as you say. The studio was built for speed, and that means that the goal is going from recording to exporting as quickly as possible. For us to spend less time on a project means that we can lower the cost for the clients, so they potentially get more out of it, and it's easier for them to come back. It was built by me and my co-worker who are content creators, not audio engineers or radio pros, and we've tried our best to use that as our advantage. Our experience is that our clients like that it looks like a podcast studio, not a radio booth, and that helps a lot for them in their short form clips to stand out, and then also to signal for the viewers who see the short form clips that there is a longer episode behind the snippets, which potentially can lead to more viewers. And gear-wise, I won't go too deep into this. Everyone knows the Shure SM7B, the Rodecaster Pro 2, and the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. And if you don't know that almost famous setup by now, I would recommend watching Tom's video on the Studio Business YouTube channel. That's where we got our inspiration from originally, and 2 years later it's been working fine. But we have just recently upgraded to the Rodecaster video, and I don't want to recommend it yet because I've only tried it 2 days. And so far it's going well and the setup is more clean, but just give me some time before I talk about that. But after having the Rodecaster Pro 2 and the ATEM switcher for 2 years now, we have dealt with just a few quirks with the setup that I haven't seen anyone else mention online, that we had to figure out ourselves. And I thought I would mention it now. First of all, I will say that the Rodecaster Pro 2 is way better than the original version. If you can find the original version online used, maybe that's an option, but the Rodecaster Pro 2, the audio is just cleaner. It has better preamps, it has a built-in cloud lifter, and overall it's just really solid. One thing I really wish they had updated with the version 2 is a micro SD card, because it is so annoying to pull out. So we have actually started connecting the caster to our computer via Thunderbolt, and then we just hit the transfer button, and it is so much easier than taking out the micro SD card and putting it back in when it is on the back of the Rodecaster. We also run 3 cameras in the podcast studio to the ATEM switcher, and they are the Sony ZV-E 10 Mark I, the first version, and overall they produce a really great image, but unfortunately it has micro HDMI, which is really flimsy and not that sturdy, and when you need something that just works and is solid, it has not been super reliable. Our solution for that has been to add a cage and then add an HDMI adapter to that cage, and that has been more solid and that can work really well. And then our second problem with that camera has actually been the overheating, because if they are on for 2 or maybe 3 hours, it can work, but more than that, they start to overheat, they shut down, and it makes sense because it's not really made for a podcast studio, and our studio gets really warm, especially in the summer. Our solution was to buy these small rig fans that you can attach on the back of the camera, but we found out that they're just a bit too noisy for the podcast studio when they are on. Plus, it's just so many cables to run a USB-C cable into the camera, to run HDMI into the adapter to the micro HDMI, and then run a second USB-C just to power this thing. So we have actually slowly started to upgrade to the FX30s in the studio. We already had them for productions, but now we are trying to have them more permanently set up in the podcast studio. So I think the cheapest and best camera I have seen for a podcast studio like this that runs HDMI to a switcher is probably the FX30. If there's another camera I have not heard about with a big enough sensor, please put it in the comment section, because I would really like to know. Another thing we have noticed is that the middle camera barely gets used because the side angles are way better for short form clips. So what we have started to do on some podcasts where the short form clips are more important than the YouTube format is that we actually put the third camera on the third person. So every single person has a camera specifically pointing at them, so they get a good straight on angle for the short form clips. In our experience, most podcast listeners are on Spotify or Podimo and not necessarily YouTube. And the only podcasts who benefit a lot from video podcasts on YouTube are those who already have a YouTube presence with other kinds of YouTube content. And for the lighting, we use RGB lights, and they are a really big hit for our clients. We use some Godox tube lights, and we bought those mainly because it had a clamp we could put on the wall, but also because they have a remote, so we can change the RGB colors super fast. That was our podcast studio, and we have done so many podcasts the past years. So if you have any questions about how to produce podcasts, put it in the comment section. But now I think we should just get started with the content studio. I consider this our blank canvas. We can change it up depending on the client's need that gets into the studio. And we've had really great success with talking head interviews for YouTube, but also for LinkedIn, paid ads, but also just social media content like short form clips. Over here behind me, we have acoustic panels on both walls, different styles, I feel like. Same brown color, but different styles because there's a little bit of light over here from behind the acoustic panel, where the other one is a full-on acoustic panel wall. And that has worked really well for our settings, and our clients have really liked this style of dark, warm acoustic panels. One of the clients mentioned that it feels like a masterclass setup or a home office, and that has worked. I say that a lot, but it has worked well. And if you are considering having acoustic panels in your setup, in your style, even in your office, don't get the lighter ones. We have some over here in our corner. It is just, you get a bit crazy when you look at it. And if you sit and stare at a person who's sitting in front of it, or just having those behind your computer screen, you get crazy. And we've bought so many of them, and they are still in the boxes after 2 years, simply because we put up a few. We realized that it just does not look good on camera. In general, if you want to get into the content studio business for clients, not necessarily for your own YouTube channel, there are 3 types of setups that we have heard from our clients that people want. And it could be different places in the world. That is how it is in Denmark. And the first one is that they want it to look more like an office, but just with really good lights, good sound, and like a really professional work from home setup. Number 2 is a more corporate approach, or like a masterclass style. And that is for the really uptight, they want it to be really clean, the setup. And the last one is a bright white setup. And we don't have that, as you might be able to tell, but that is one of the things we are trying to get to in the new setup, because we want to be able to have a bright white, more feminine setup, and I'm really excited for that. And of course, a content studio is nothing without paper backdrops, and I feel like that is essential for any content studio because it is so versatile, and you can make an ugly wall look good just by adding a different paper backdrop behind it. I mean, in front of the wall behind the person or product. We usually keep beige, white, black, and dark blue as staples hanging in the ceiling, and then sometimes we have a few unique colors we need to pop out depending on the specific shoot we have. And the last side of our content studio is the top-down setup, and I have really loved building this so much that it was one of the first videos I made here on YouTube. We've had different variations of it. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but for an e-commerce, for me, we have watch companies as clients where they just need to quickly show off a watch in a really good way, and this setup has saved us hours because it's permanently set up in our studio. And of course, the last part of any content studio is the gear setup, the charging station, and our stuff, because we're changing it up soon, looks empty, it looks messy. We haven't really found a good solution for everything to look nice. It has not been our priority. Like most other people on YouTube, they make everything look beautiful, and I watch so many of those videos because it is so satisfying to see everything with the Gridfinity 3D printers set up super nicely. But it doesn't pay us to set it up nicely. It doesn't earn us back money because it is the studio behind me and the podcast studio that pays our bills. It's not the charging station or anything like that. So I just wanted to have that in here at the end of the video, because I just want to be so transparent that YouTube make things look so beautiful and so satisfying. And if you find it satisfying, by any means do it. I wish I had more time to make things perfect and 3D print and all that stuff. But as of now, as a creative business, it doesn't make sense, at least not right now. To make a studio tour, there are 100 things you can add that I haven't mentioned, with what lights are in the ceiling, why did we choose the most boring, plain furniture, all of these things. And if you're interested, I can make a part 2, but just add some questions in the comment section if you have any questions. And if not, thank you so much for watching this video.